Welcome to Relatable Wisdom, the podcast where real people share timeless ideas. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and in every episode we dive into the philosophies, quotes, points, and life lessons that shape how we live, think, and grow. No matter where you are in life, this show is here to remind you wisdom is everywhere, and it's always relatable most of the times.
Tell us your name and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Alesia Galati, and I'm the founder of Galati Media, which is a full-service podcast management agency where we help business owners, thought leaders, and nonprofits use their podcasts to really make the impact in the world that they want to make. And I've been podcasting since about 2018. I've been guesting on podcasts since 2016, and podcasting I think is such an intimate and beautiful way to connect with new people and your audience on just such a deeper, more meaningful level than we do on, say, a platform like social media. It's such a different experience to be able to hear someone in your ears as you're kind of going about your daily tasks. And yeah, I love the medium so much.
Yeah, it's obvious. It's obvious that you do love the medium because yeah, you could go on and on talking about podcasting, and I'm like, yeah, wait, let me stop her before she
Yeah.
continues. Okay. I can't wait for us to actually talk about podcasting on my podcast about podcasting. What's the quote you want to share with me today?
Yes. So the quote that I want to share with you today is one that my mom used to say to me, and she has since passed away. She passed away in 2019.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
And thank you. I appreciate that. And something that she said that really just stuck with me, especially as a teenager, was this phrase: the answer is already no if you don't ask. And that is something that I have really had to sit with, especially as a woman in society, having to ask for what I want rather than just kind of letting what happens happen to me and just taking control of my life in a really impactful way. And so, yeah, that quote, every time I think about it, it just makes me ask for what you want instead of just assuming that the other person knows what you're trying to ask for.
Yeah. Wow. The answer is already no if you don't ask. Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. That's profound. Uh, the reason I'm laughing is I had a thought, right, that I was holding, just revolving in my head recently, and that is we reject ourselves even before we reach out, right? If I'm like, oh yeah, apply for this job position. Yeah, why would they give me this job position? And I'm like, you've not even applied yet. You've told yourself no, that you don't deserve
Yeah.
it, and then you start wondering why. Oh well, people reject me and all that. And I'm like, the rejection shouldn't be from you. It should be from others. Your job is never to reject yourself. People can reject you. Yeah, it happens, but not you rejecting yourself.
Yeah. And that's where I think it's so important is we are always going and should always be our best advocate instead of expecting other people to be that. We have to stand. Yeah, we have to stand up for ourselves. We have to advocate for ourselves. And I think that it's so important to okay, yes, the answer is no, but can we change the answer from a no to a yes with some talking about it or explaining things, right? I think there's so much to that. And even thinking about when it comes to sales, and I think that that's something that a lot of people can struggle with, of especially business owners, even as podcasters, right? Trying to sell our idea of, oh, this is my show and you should listen to it. We can struggle with selling ourselves. And I think that sometimes we almost infantilize other people, make it like they don't have a choice in whether they accept us or not. And it's like, you didn't even give them the option to accept you because you didn't even put yourself out there. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's just so much to it.
Yeah. I think recently for me, what happened was that I reached out to a couple of podcast hosts, right? I saw their contacts on the database and I reached out to them. And I was like, yeah, I have a show called, the Relatable Wisdom, and I'd love to do a promo swaps. And I just sent the message, send this stuff. And people started saying, yeah, of course, definitely, let's do it. Of course. And I'm like, what, seriously? What's going on here? It was as though I had asked, not expecting them to say yes. And so when they did say yes, I was shocked. I was like, wait, dude, what's happening?
I love that so much. That is so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, good for you. And I think that if we put ourselves out there more often and we actually get out of our own way, because usually it's us stopping, like you said, it's us saying no to ourselves before anyone else has to. And, maybe that's to protect ourselves from someone else saying no to us or to protect us from people leaving us or whatever those feelings and thoughts are. But I think that just putting it out there is so stinking important. And I had this conversation with someone recently where they were like, hey, I'm about to launch my podcast and I'm not really sure how I want to do it. And I was like, well, have you reached out to anyone and asked anyone to be a guest? And they were like, yeah, but people are saying no. And I was like, there's a way to ask, to get that yes. And sometimes you get more yeses if you reach a little lower and you're like, oh man, I probably should have reached a little higher, right? So get out of your own way and just make the ask, be specific, right? I think that this is something that one of my my friends tells me often. She's a productivity coach and she talks a lot about creating a good home environment and getting everybody on board with being more productive, being more having things in line the way that you maybe want them to be. And she says something that I think sticks with me a lot, and it to this point of your spouse, my husband, is there to support me. And if I don't tell him how to support me, and I think, okay, he can read my mind and he knows exactly what I'm thinking, then it's not going to get anything accomplished because I haven't said, hey, honey, if you could just do this, 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 and this, that would be extremely helpful for me. Instead, I'm over there stewing he doesn't want to help me when no, he loves me and he cares about me. Otherwise, he wouldn't be married to me, typically.
Yeah.
And he wants to support me. So why not ask? And to that whole concept of the answer's already no, unless we just ask for what we want.
Let's take a quick pause. If you're enjoying this conversation and want more thought-provoking ideas straight to your inbox, join the Relatable Wisdom email list. It's free, quick, and filled with bite-sized insights, inspiring quotes, and behind-the-scenes reflections from our guests. Just head to relatablewisdom.com/join. That is relatablewisdom.com/join. Or tap the link in the show notes. And hey, subscribing to the podcast helps more than you think, and it's free. So if you haven't already, hit that follow button wherever you're listening. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah, a lot of things are just running through my mind currently. And the first one is, even in the Bible, there's a verse that says, ask and ye shall receive. And I'm like, but God already knows our hearts. He's an all-knowing being and all that. He knows what we wanted, but he says we should ask. Now, let alone humans that are mere mortals that cannot read your mind or see what you're thinking.
Right.
And you're like, yeah, well, they should know. And I'm like, if the Lord himself is saying we should ask, what do you think about normal human beings that cannot see our mind? It just, there's as you said earlier on, that there's the assumption that they should know, they should get it. Yeah, we need these things, but it doesn't work that way.
So true. So true. Yeah, we need to get out of our own way. Ask for what we want. And I think that we'll actually get what we want, right?
Yeah.
I think people talk so much about oh, I'm calling this in and I'm gonna manifest it. And it's like, but did you ask for it? Can we just ask for the things?
Yeah. Something you mentioned is that a lot of the times people say, well, I've asked, right? And for me, I remember an instance where someone's like, I've searched everywhere. And I'm like, okay, where did you search, right? And then you ask, okay, how many persons did you ask, right? And you're like, oh, I just reached out to 5 guests and they all said no. And I'm like, no, of course not. Like, you're doing the right thing, but you're just doing too little of it. Maybe they are busy. Maybe they have a lot on their plates. There's so many reasons why they'll say no. Have you reached out to maybe 50 and see, or 100, and then you realize that, okay, what I'm doing is terrible. I need to work on my process and the script and all that. But sometimes we just ask too little, ask two persons, and like, oh, they all said no. People hate me. Nobody wants to be on my show.
Yep. Yeah, get 100 yes, 100 no's, right? Like, there was this woman I used to follow years ago, and her whole thing was like, raise your hand and say yes. And then she did a year of no's where she would ask audacious things, like things that were so outside of her comfort zone. And every time she got a no, she put a little sticker on like a chart. And she was like, I'm going to get 100 no's this year. And I'm going to ask for the most outrageous things. And I'm going to keep trying to like build my business. I'm going to keep trying to do these things, but I'm going to get 100 no's. And I think that like reward of, I got a sticker, I got a no. Does that mean I'm somebody? Somebody said no to me. That's great.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that if we just kind of take ourselves out of it, because to your point, they might be busy. They might be doing other things. Everyone is living and we are not, like I like to tell my 11-year-old, you're not the center of the world. Sadly, I know it sucks, but you're not. There are other people in the world who have priorities as well. And so if we like kind of get outside of our heads and say, okay, maybe I ask 50 people to be on my show instead of just 5,
Yeah.
or reach out to 50 people to buy something from me instead of just 5 and saying, well, darn it, I knew it, I was going to fail. No, you just didn't try hard enough. And I think that if we kind of step back and say, all right, this is not about me, and it's not, because most of the no's are not about you, then we'll actually get a lot further with what we're trying to accomplish.
You just mentioning your 11-year-old reminded me of a skit. And it's not a skit, it's more like an internet video I saw online. And it was these two little girls. The elder sister was trying to tell the younger one that in order for me to give you this thing you're looking for, you have to ask politely. You have to say please and call my name and say, can you give me this? And
Yes.
at that point in time, the younger sister was bamboozled. She was really proud, but she had to muster the courage and say, please, can you give me this? And she was like, no, say it again, but this time mention my name. And I had a little bit more respect. And she was like, please. And let's just say her name is Alesia. Can you give me this? And after the younger sister mustered the courage and was humble enough to ask, the elder sister was like, no, you may not. And I was like, that's what called a violation. But that's the reward.
Yeah.
That's the reward.
Yeah.
So you just have to get used to asking politely and get rejected.
Yes.
You're not the fact that you ask politely
That's
doesn't
so
mean
funny.
that they're going to say yes now. No one owes you anything.
Yeah. And sometimes it's worth, and I think having kids just teaches you so much. So my husband homeschools our kids.
Okay.
And I work from home. And the youngest one, he's in MMA, he's autistic, and he's like trying to build muscle because he wants to get better at MMA.
Okay.
And he's like, can I do a workout on the TV? So like a YouTube video where he could do a workout.
Oh,
And my
okay.
husband said no. So instead of asking, well, why? He asked, can I use your phone? My husband was using his phone for something, paying bills or doing something at the time. And, my 8-year-old's like, well, Dad said I can't do a workout, right? And I think this is just like his autistic brain, which is like, I can't do this
that
thing.
is a life lesson right there.
Dad said no to everything, right? It's like just the hyperbole almost that happens.
How did you even come up with that conclusion? What is that conclusion based on?
Exactly. So I had just finished doing So I do math with my older one because he wants to get into MIT and he wants to like do all these things. And I'm a little better at math than my husband. So I do math with my older kiddo. And so I was like, just finished with him and I was like, hey, what's going on? You're hiding. We're on the borderline of a major meltdown. What's going on, buddy? He's like, well, Dad said that I couldn't do a workout today. And I was like, I don't know that that's what Dad exactly said. But you know what? Let's have a pity party together. Let's sit in the living room. Let's grab one of your stuffed animals. We're gonna grab the the octopus. Everybody's gonna hold hands. You're gonna hold the octopus hand. I'll hold the octopus hand, and we're just gonna have a pity party together. And I don't want to go to work. I don't want to do anything. I want to sit down and I want to read all day, and I don't want anybody to bother me about anything. But I kind of have to. But this is what I'm feeling right now. What are you feeling? What's your pity party about? And he's like, well, Dad said I couldn't do my workout today. And I was like, but Dad actually say that? What did Dad actually say? And then my husband starts to chime in. And I was like, nope, you're not allowed to talk unless you're in the pity party. You got to get into the pity party with us. And so he comes in and he's like, well, I said that you couldn't do the workout on the TV. And I said, I wonder why Dad said that. Why didn't you ask Dad why he said that you couldn't do it on the TV? And he's like, why can't I do it on the TV? And my husband says, well, because your brother is in the kitchen and we have an open concept kitchen living room. And if you're doing a workout on the TV, he could get distracted while he's supposed to be doing his schoolwork on the computer. And I was like, oh man, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Man. All right. Well, I wonder why Dad wouldn't let you use your phone. Why don't you let you use his phone? Why don't you ask him why he wouldn't let you use his phone? And so he asked, and he was like, oh, I was doing this thing on it. And that's why I couldn't let you use my phone at the time. And I was like, oh, you know what? That makes sense too.
Yeah.
I wonder if Dad'll let you use the computer because no one's using the computer that you use for school. I wonder if you could use the laptop to do your workout video. And he was like hit light bulb moment. Like, what? I could use the computer? Like, I was ready to have a meltdown. What do you mean there were other options? And he was like, well, Dad, can I use the computer? And he was like, yeah, I don't see why not. I was like, awesome. All right. Hug out the pity party. We're done.
Yeah.
And I think that so often if we just get out of our heads and say, what is another avenue? What is another way that I could maybe accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish or get what I'm trying to get? Get that yes and, right?
Yeah.
In any way that if we open ourselves up to other possibilities that will actually be able to get the thing that we want instead of just saying, well, I got one no. That's it. It's done. I'm never going to be able to do it again.
Yeah, that's the thing for me. I think it takes me back to when I first started asking out guests to be on the podcast, and I had a couple of rejections, and the thing I would say was like, "Oh yeah, thank you so much for letting me know that you won't be able to be on the podcast instead of just ghosting me, right?" So I know I play on
Right.
their ego a bit, and I'm like, I'm curious, why won't you be on the podcast, right? And then some of them tell me that, oh well, I don't go to podcasts that are not minimum of 6 months old. Okay, that makes sense. I get that. Okay, and some of them say, well, your podcast doesn't align with my subject matter area. I like to go on this very specific niche podcast. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Others will say, and then the others. So I didn't realize that the world wasn't just about me, right? They had their own reasons. They had their own
Right.
interests too, and so it just did not serve and meet their goals. But I was like, no, why would you reject me? You hate me. You're wicked. Don't do that. And when I started to realize that, I was like, okay, 6 months old. So which means that if my podcast goes over 6 months, I can reach out to that guest. So sometimes the no we get is actually not a no. It's just no for now, right? It's like in the future you can apply later on, but it's for now, no. Sometimes we're like, oh, no forever.
You were talking about how someone had said no to you and they said, oh, well, 6 months later you could. And like you haven't been around for 6 months yet. And you were like, all right, so awesome. That means 6 months later I can reach back out to them. And then that's kind of how you were ending.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing this quote.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's one that I don't think we take enough time to think about. especially as people who are like asking things of other people as podcast hosts or as business owners or whatever. Like we do take it, I think, a little more personally than we need to, which is the natural, right? Like that's human reaction to do that, to say, oh, well, they're rejecting me, or oh, it's a no
Yeah.
forever for me. When really all we need to do is step outside of ourselves and, like you said, reach back out and say, hey, could you give me a reason why? I'm curious, right? And just kind of open with that curiosity of like, I'm curious why you had a no for
Yeah.
now. And like you said, playing to their ego a
Yeah.
little bit, right? Wherever you
Yeah.
need to, do what you need to do to get the answer that you need. But I think that it does allow us to say, oh, so it's not a no to
Yeah.
me. It's at all, but it's a no to
Yeah.
right now, or it's a no
Yeah.
because of them. Almost like it's a you, it's not me kind of thing.
Ah, usually it's them. When anybody that says that statement, you know that it's absolutely that person that is saying it. So it's not you, it's me. I need to work on myself. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I think that it's so important. So one, thank you for having me on to talk about my quote from my mom. I appreciate it so much. And yeah, I think that having these conversations and digging deep is so important. And there's so much that one, the listeners can get, but also like we as humans just having conversation can get as well. So thank you for
man,
having me on.
it's been an absolute pleasure. Where can listeners learn more about you and what you do? Connect.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. If you are interested in podcasting or learning more about podcasting, you can go to helpmypod.com, and that has resources and a free consultation and all of that stuff. But very similarly to how I show up to this conversation is very similarly to how I show up to most conversations. It's going to be very real. It's going to be very a little side of therapy. I'm not licensed in any way possible, but I've had plenty of clients say, I feel like you're part podcast production and strategy, part therapist sometimes. And I'm like, not what I signed up for, but thanks anyway. It's just how I show up in the world. So yeah, I would love to talk to anyone who is contemplating podcasts or struggling with their podcasts. There is space and room for you, whether it's through guesting or hosting. There's plenty of options. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute delight to chat.
Yes, thank you. And also make sure that you leave a rating and review on this podcast. I think that's so important and it helps you grow your show. So if you're listening and you're like, how can I support? Please rate and review this podcast so that way this show can grow and get in front of more people
Thank you
as
for
well.
that shout out.
You've been listening to Relatable Wisdom, and I've been your host, Wisdom Okonkwo. You've been listening to the podcast where every story, quote, and insight helps you see life a little differently. If you enjoyed today's episode, follow the show on your favorite podcast app and share it with someone who loved the conversation. For more inspiring voices and timeless wisdom, visit relatablewisdom.com. Until next time, keep living, learning, and collecting wisdom that matters most to you.